Jack Miller woke up to a woman in his kitchen, wearing his old flannel shirt and smiling like she belonged in the home he was fighting to keep for his daughter. His mouth went dry. He had no idea who she was. "You really don't remember last night, do you, Jack?" His mouth went dry. I'm sorry, who are you? How did you get in here?" Then she set down his chipped coffee mug and delivered 3 terrifying words. "I own this." She wasn't just a stranger. She was the CEO of the company that owned his house, the one about to evict him. The check she offered could solve all his problems and secure his daughter's future. But Jack's pride flared, and he shoved the money back at her. She smiled. "Then maybe I owe you more than money, Mr. Miller. I'm not sure what that is yet." Jack found a note taped to his front door. He read the contents and realized he'd just gambled his daughter's future on a mystery woman's next move. What did she decide to do with his house? Before we continue, please tell us in the comments where you are watching from. And don't forget to like and subscribe to get more stories like this. Jack Miller, 38 years old, single father, ex-factory mechanic. The plant closed 3 years ago when the corporate office decided their small Midwestern town wasn't profitable enough anymore. Now he worked whatever he could find: oil changes at Tommy's garage when cars needed fixing, appliance repairs for neighbors who paid in cash or casseroles, night shifts stocking shelves at Miller's Market when they called him in. His daughter, Emma, 9 years old, too smart for her own good, spent her afternoons reading library books about horses and drawing pictures of places she'd never been. Her mother left when Emma was 4. No phone calls, no birthday cards, no forwarding address. Their routine never changed. Jack fell asleep on the couch after late shifts, the television still flickering, an overdue electric bill taped to the screen as his daily reminder. Morning scramble meant packing Emma's lunch with whatever they had left: peanut butter on bread, apple slices turning brown, a handwritten note that said, "Proud of you," tucked between the sandwich and the bruised fruit. Every Sunday, they walked to the side street diner. Coffee for Jack, 1 pancake for Emma. Deb, the waitress, always slipped Emma extra syrup packets and asked about school projects. Jack nursed his coffee for an hour, making it last, watching Emma color on the paper placemats. The landlord company, Maple Ridge Properties, got bought by some bigger group 6 months ago. Mr. Teston Payne, the local property manager, wasn't cruel, but he followed rules. "I like you, Jack, but my hands are tied. New owners are stricter about late payments." 2 months behind on rent. The eviction notice stuck to his refrigerator with a magnet shaped like a sunflower. Emma's contribution to make the bad news prettier. Yesterday felt like a blur. Jack finished stocking shelves at 11:30, drove home through rain that turned the back roads into rivers. Halfway down County Road 12, he saw a car nose down in a flooded ditch, hazard lights blinking like a heartbeat. No ambulance, no police, just one taillight and a desperate hand pressed against the driver's window. He pulled over, waded into water that soaked through his work boots, helped a shaken woman climb out through the passenger door. She'd hit black ice, airbags deployed, was dazed and refusing the hospital because she had a flight in the morning. He insisted she come warm up at his house until the tow truck arrived. He remembered making her tea, giving her his flannel because her clothes were soaked through. Emma sleepily wandered out in her pajamas, asked, "Daddy, is she okay?" Then, nothing. He must have crashed on the couch like always. Now she stood in his kitchen, wearing his shirt, cooking eggs like she belonged there, the smell of breakfast mixed with the stack of unpaid bills on his counter. The eviction notice caught morning light from the window. Caroline Hart, she'd introduced herself properly, now pointed at the notice with her coffee mug. "That's why I'm here." She was Caroline Hart, early 40s, CEO of Heartland Retail Group. They owned the grocery store where Jack stocked shelves, and apparently they'd just bought Maple Ridge Properties too. She gently reminded him how he'd dragged her from the wreck, wrapped her in his flannel, given up his own bed so she could lie down while the shock wore off. Jack felt heat rise in his cheeks. A stranger seeing his rundown place, his second-hand furniture, his daughter's drawings taped to walls that needed painting. Emma shuffled into the kitchen, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Are you the lady from the rain?" Caroline knelt down to Emma's height. "I am. Thank you for the blanket you brought me last night." Caroline laid a thick envelope on the kitchen table. "To cover the trouble," she said. Jack opened it with careful fingers. A cashier's check for $5,000. Enough to clear his back rent, catch up on utilities, maybe even fix the rattling in his truck's engine. He stiffened. "I didn't help you for money." "I know," she said. "It's just my way of saying thank you." But Jack heard pity in her voice, charity wrapped in politeness. His father raised him on, "We don't take handouts," and the words burned in his throat. Caroline glanced at the eviction notice stuck to his refrigerator. "You're 2 months behind," she said quietly. "As of last week, my company owns this house. I can make this go away." Jack's pride flared hot and immediate. He resented the idea that his kindness was a line item she could pay off, a debt she could clear with her checkbook. "I don't need a rich stranger buying back my self-respect." Caroline looked genuinely surprised, confused even. She thought he'd be relieved, grateful. Most people would be. Jack pushed the envelope back across the table, the check sliding against the wood. "I pulled you out of that ditch because it was right," he said. "Not because I was waiting for a tip." Caroline left the check where it was, took a slow breath that seemed to steady her. "Then maybe I owe you more than money, Mr. Miller. I'm not sure what that is yet." She looked at the eviction notice again, at Emma coloring at the table, at Jack's work clothes hanging over a chair to dry. "But if nothing changes, you and your daughter are out on the street in 3 weeks, whether you take my help or not. If you've ever felt trapped between pride and desperation, you know exactly how Jack feels right now. Comment below, what would you do in his situation? Later that day, Jack dropped Emma at Riverside Elementary and headed to the side street diner for coffee. The familiar bell chimed as he pushed through the glass door, the smell of bacon grease and burnt coffee wrapping around him like an old coat. The small television above the counter showed the local morning news. Jack slid onto his usual stool, nodding to Deb as she poured coffee without being asked. "Local CEO walks away from late-night crash," scrolled across the bottom of the screen. The reporter stood outside Mercy General Hospital, microphone steady despite the wind. Behind her, Caroline Hart emerged from the automatic doors. Cleaned up now, wearing a navy blazer and looking nothing like the shaken woman from Jack's kitchen that morning. "Miss Hart, can you tell us about the Good Samaritan who helped you last night?" Caroline paused, choosing her words carefully. "Someone reminded me that some people stand in the rain for others with nothing to gain. That's the kind of person I want working in my company." Deb nudged Jack's elbow. "Hey, isn't that the lady from your story? The one you pulled out of Miller's Creek?" Jack watched Caroline on the screen, feeling something twist in his chest. The reporter pressed for details. Where exactly did this happen? Who was this mystery helper? How much reward money changed hands? Caroline smiled, the kind of smile that didn't give anything away. "He asked me not to make a fuss. I'd like to honor that. No name, no address, no mention of Maple Street or eviction notices, or $5,000 checks left on kitchen tables." At the counter, 2 regulars grumbled into their coffee. "Rich folks and their PR stunts," muttered Earl from the hardware store. "Bet she gave him a 20 and called it charity." Someone else mumbled that Jack was lucky if she gave him anything at all. But Jack stared at the screen, feeling something he hadn't expected. She could have told the world his name, made herself look generous, turned his private struggle into her public relations win. Instead, she protected his dignity when she didn't have to. The guilt hit him like cold water. How harsh he'd been that morning, how quick to assume the worst. As he paid his bill, his phone buzzed. Tommy from the garage, calling about work. Jack answered, hoping for extra hours. "Sorry, Jack. Corporate's cutting labor costs. Can't give you the transmission job this week." Jack stepped outside, looked at clouds rolling in again, the same gray that brought Caroline Hart into his life. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Jack, it's Caroline Hart. I'm coming by your house at 3. Please be there. I have something to fix." He stared at the message, torn between pride that still burned and desperation that grew heavier each day. Before 3 o'clock, Jack found himself at Emma's school, watching recess through the chain-link fence. Emma shared her granola bar with a classmate who'd forgotten lunch money again. She always did that, gave away half of what little she had. A black SUV pulled into the school parking lot. Caroline stepped out, no entourage, just a to-go coffee cup and car keys. Teachers looked over, curious about the unexpected visitor. She walked past Jack toward the office, then stopped when she saw Emma on the playground. Watched his daughter break her cookie in half, hand the bigger piece to another kid. "Can we talk here?" Caroline asked, settling beside Jack at the fence. Away from little ears? She told him about growing up in a trailer park with a single mother who worked double shifts at the truck stop diner. How a stranger once paid a month of their rent when her mom got pneumonia and couldn't work. "We never found out who he was," Caroline said, watching Emma push another child on the swings. "We just knew somebody out there cared enough to keep us from losing everything." She admitted building a company that often forgot people like that stranger, like Jack's mother who probably worked those same kinds of shifts. The crash shook her. Her driver took the night off. She thought she could manage the drive herself. Ended up in a ditch realizing how quickly everything could go wrong. "I looked into your file this morning," Caroline said. "After I left your house." Jack tensed, but she continued. "Perfect attendance at every job. Never missed a shift, even when Emma had the flu last winter, and you brought her to work with you. Pay stubs that show you're working 60 hours a week and still can't make ends meet." She made him an offer. Clear as back rent. Wipe the slate clean. A full-time position with her company's local maintenance team, steady hours. Health insurance for Emma. Benefits that meant he wouldn't have to choose between fixing his truck and buying groceries. "There's one condition," she said. "I need honest feedback about how my company treats workers and tenants. Someone who'll look me in the eye and tell me when we're getting it wrong." Jack felt the weight of everything he needed pressing against everything he feared. Being owned, being obligated, being grateful to someone who could take it all away with a phone call. Emma ran up to the fence, waving a drawing she'd made during art class. 3 people standing in front of a little house, her, Jack, and a woman with long hair wearing an oversized shirt. "That's you, Daddy," Emma said, pressing the paper against the chain link. "And that's the lady you helped. I drew her staying." Jack and Caroline shared a look neither of them knew how to name. "I don't want to own you, Jack," Caroline said quietly. "I just don't want the world to keep kicking men like you when they're already down." The words hung between them like a bridge. Jack wasn't sure he was brave enough to cross. Have you ever had to choose between your pride and your family's future? The next part of Jack's story will surprise you. Subscribe now so you don't miss what happens when he finally makes his choice. Jack took a day to think. He sat in the diner booth where he and Emma shared Sunday pancakes, nursing coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. Deb refilled his cup without asking, the way she always did when someone needed time to work through something heavy. "You look like a man wrestling with the devil," she said, wiping down the table next to his. Something like that. He drove to Mercy General Hospital that afternoon, told himself he was just checking on something. Found a nurse in the emergency department who remembered a stubborn CEO from the night before. "Refused a full workup," the nurse said, shaking her head. "Had a mild concussion, should have stayed for observation. But she kept making phone calls, arguing with someone about not raising rents yet in some properties." The nurse lowered her voice. "Left a donation for the ER before she went. $5,000. But she did it under her mother's name. Didn't want any recognition." Jack felt something shift in his chest. This wasn't about public relations or tax write-offs. Caroline Hart was awkward, sometimes clumsy in her kindness, but she was trying. Mr. Payne called that evening, asked Jack to meet him at the property office. The older man looked tired, worn down by 30 years of collecting rent and delivering bad news. "Got an email this morning that I've never seen in 3 decades of property management," Payne said, sliding a printed page across his desk. Jack read it twice. Caroline had insisted on pausing all rent increases in their town for 6 months. She'd offered to cut her own salary to balance the books, absorb the lost revenue herself. "Owners don't do that, Jack," Payne said quietly. "They raise rents, cut maintenance, squeeze every dollar they can. This one, she might actually be different." Jack realized Caroline wasn't just throwing money at his problem. She was changing policies that affected dozens of families like his, people who worked multiple jobs and still couldn't keep up with rising costs. He also confronted the truth about his own pride. His father raised him on, "We don't take handouts," but they'd lost their house when his dad's back gave out, and he was too stubborn to ask for help. Jack watched his mother work 3 jobs, trying to save a home they'd already lost. He didn't want Emma to remember her childhood the same way. When he got home, an envelope was taped to his front door, the eviction notice with a big red void stamp across it. A sticky note in careful handwriting. This part is handled. The rest is up to you. See. Inside the envelope, a simple business card. Facilities and Community Coordinator. Heartland Retail Group. Jack Miller. Pending. He stood on his porch, holding the card, torn between fear of obligation and relief so strong it made his knees weak. Emma appeared in the doorway, backpack still on her shoulders. "Daddy, are you okay?" Jack looked at his daughter, thought about the drawing she'd made of 3 people standing in front of their house. Sometimes kindness didn't come with strings attached. Sometimes it just came. "Yeah, sweetheart," he said, folding the business card carefully. "I think we're going to be okay." A month later, the community center hosted Heartland Neighbor Night. Free dinner, job fair, question and answer session with the company about housing and employment policies. Jack attended mostly for the free meal with Emma, but also because Caroline had asked him to be there. She stood at the front of the room in a simple blazer and jeans. Nothing flashy, taking notes while tenants complained about slow repairs and surprise fees. An older man ranted about corporate suits ruining everything, how companies like hers were destroying small towns. Caroline listened without interrupting, wrote down every concern. Then she called Jack to the small stage without warning. "The man who dragged me out of a ditch told me something I needed to hear," she said into the microphone. Jack, uncomfortable in a borrowed button-up shirt, stood at the podium looking out at faces he'd known his whole life. He could praise Caroline and look like her puppet, or criticize her and risk losing everything she'd offered. He chose honesty, like she'd asked. "I've worked multiple jobs since the factory closed," he said. "Lived with past due notices taped to my refrigerator. Been scared to check the mailbox. When she tried to pay me for helping her, I pushed the money back because I didn't want to feel bought." The room was quiet. Even the kids in the back corner stopped fidgeting. "I still don't like the idea of anyone owning my home," Jack continued. "But I've watched this woman change things in a month that I've never seen a company change in years. She doesn't always get it right, but she's listening. And she didn't just save my house, she gave me a chance to stand on my own feet again." Caroline took the microphone, visibly moved. She announced Jack's new role as Facilities and Community Liaison. He would coordinate repairs, bring tenant concerns directly to her office, help design hardship policies that treated people as neighbors instead of numbers. Some people clapped, others remained skeptical. But Mrs. Henderson from down the street stood up. "Jack fixed my furnace in January for whatever I could afford," she told the room. "If she's willing to listen to a man like that, I'm willing to listen to her." After the event, Jack and Caroline stood in the quiet hall, while Emma dozed across 2 chairs pushed together. Caroline handed Jack a small wrapped box. Inside, a simple house key on a new ring, engraved with "Miller Home. The house you rent is now part of a rent-to-own program," she explained. "Fair payments. Path to ownership in 10 years if you stay current. No tricks, just a chance." Jack stared at the key, overwhelmed. "Why?" Caroline smiled, tears in her eyes. "Because someone did that for my mom once. I thought they'd made a mistake. Maybe they just saw who she really was." The key felt warm in Jack's palm, solid and real, and his. 1 year later, the same house on Maple Street looked different. Fresh white paint covered the porch railings where Jack had spent 3 weekends in October, scraping away years of neglect. A small flower bed bloomed beside the front steps, planted by Emma's careful hands with marigold seeds Caroline had brought from her own garden. A worn "welcome" mat sat in front of the door, genuinely meant this time instead of hiding the shame underneath. Jack worked full-time for Heartland now, steady hours that let him sleep in his own bed instead of collapsing on the couch after double shifts. His back didn't ache every morning. His coffee came from a machine that worked instead of the temperamental old pot that only brewed half a cup before giving up. Around town, people knew him as the guy you called when something broke, the man who'd look you in the eye and tell you the truth about what it would cost to fix. Emma thrived in 4th grade. Her homework spread across a little desk Jack had built from scrap wood in her bedroom. She still drew pictures of horses galloping through meadows she'd never seen. But now, she also drew blueprints of tree houses and suspension bridges, saying she wanted to build things like her dad when she grew up. Caroline spent more time visiting stores and properties than sitting in her city office 40 miles away. When she came to town, she ate at the side street diner, instead of the fancy steakhouse by the highway. Deb always saved her the corner booth and asked about her mother, who'd moved to a nice apartment in Florida with the money Caroline sent every month. Not everything was perfect. Some tenants still complained about slow repairs and rising costs. Mrs. Patterson from Elm Street called Jack twice a week about her leaky faucet, which he'd fixed 3 times, but she kept forgetting. Jack and Caroline butted heads over policies, over where to spend limited maintenance funds, over how fast they could implement changes without breaking the budget that kept everyone employed. They learned that doing the right thing wasn't clean or easy like it looked in movies. It was daily work, sometimes exhausting, full of small compromises and difficult conversations. But it was worth it when Mrs. Henderson's heat worked all winter, when Tommy's garage got the contract to service company vehicles, when families stayed in homes instead of moving to cheaper towns an hour away. Jack still worried sometimes. Late at night, he'd check the bank balance on his phone, count the days until the next paycheck, remember what it felt like to choose between groceries and gasoline. The fear lived quieter now, but it lived. One Sunday morning in November, Jack fell asleep on the couch again after a long week of emergency repairs at 3 different properties. A burst pipe at the Riverside Apartments, a furnace breakdown at the senior complex, a roof leak that soaked through Mrs. Garcia's ceiling and ruined her late husband's photographs. The smell of coffee and bacon drifted from the kitchen, familiar and warm. Real bacon, not the turkey substitute he used to buy when Emma wasn't looking. He opened his eyes to find Carolyn at his stove, wearing his old red flannel shirt again, flipping pancakes while Emma sat at the table coloring and telling her about a school project on community helpers. Caroline listened with the same attention she gave tenant complaints and budget meetings, asking questions about Emma's drawing of firefighters and teachers and the man who fixed broken things. The scene mirrored that first impossible morning 18 months ago, but everything had changed. Caroline didn't feel like an intruder anymore, didn't look like a stranger wearing his clothes. She felt like someone who belonged there, someone who'd earned her place through a year of showing up, of keeping promises, of proving that kindness could be more than a one-time gesture. "You really can't stay out of my kitchen, can you?" Jack said, stretching and smiling. Caroline laughed, the sound easy and natural. "You really can't stop dragging people out of ditches, can you?" Emma looked up from her drawing, crayon poised over a fire truck. "It's okay, Dad. She makes better pancakes than you anyway." Jack looked around the same small house, the same old couch that still had a spring that poked his ribs, the same kitchen table where they'd first argued about money and pride and what help really meant. But the fear was gone. The stack of bills on the counter showed paid stamps in blue ink instead of red warnings. The refrigerator hummed without the electrical hiccup that used to make the lights flicker. On the kitchen counter, a payment schedule marked "On Track" in green ink. Beside it, a letter from the bank approving Jack for a small business loan to expand his repair service, with Caroline listed as a character reference. Emma's latest drawing hung on the refrigerator, their house, with 3 figures holding hands in front of it, a garden full of flowers, and a sun that took up half the sky. "I used to think taking help meant I'd failed," Jack said softly, watching Emma show Caroline her drawing of a bridge that could open to let boats through. Caroline shook her head, flipping the last pancake with the spatula Jack had bought at a garage sale 5 years ago. "Sometimes it just means someone saw you getting tired and decided to stand in the rain with you." Jack glanced at Emma, laughing as she explained how drawbridges worked and why they were better than regular bridges, and nodded. The morning light slipped through the same thin curtains, but it felt different now, warmer, like it was lighting up a home instead of just a place where people slept. "Sometimes," he said, "kindness doesn't just pull you out of a ditch. It helps you build a life on solid ground." 6 months later, Jack's repair service had grown beyond what he'd imagined possible. 3 part-time employees now worked out of the converted garage behind his house, Tommy's nephew Mike, who had a gift for electrical work, and 2 recent high school graduates who needed steady jobs more than they needed college debt. A hand-painted sign read, "Miller and Associates Home Repair," in Emma's careful lettering, with a small drawing of a wrench beside the phone number. Caroline had been promoted to regional director, overseeing properties and retail locations across 4 states. Her office was now in the state capital, 2 hours away, but she still came to town every few weeks. Still ate at the side street diner, where Deb saved her the corner booth. Still stopped by to see how Emma's latest school project was progressing, and to argue with Jack about whether the senior housing complex needed new windows or just better weather stripping. The rent-to-own program had expanded to 12 other small towns across the region. Jack consulted on the policies, helped train other community liaisons, shared what he'd learned about treating people with dignity while still running a profitable business. He'd spoken at 3 conferences, wearing the same borrowed button-up shirt each time, telling rooms full of executives about the difference between charity and opportunity. Emma, now 10 3/4 as she insisted on saying, had started a garden club at school. Every Tuesday after classes, she taught younger kids how to plant seeds and tend growing things, showing them the same patience Caroline had shown her that first spring when they'd planted marigolds together. The school principal called it peer mentoring. Emma called it helping people grow stuff. On a warm Tuesday evening in late May, Jack sat on his front porch watching Emma practice riding the bicycle Caroline had given her for her 10th birthday. The training wheels had come off 2 months ago, and Emma was finally steady enough to ride around the entire block without wobbling into Mrs. Patterson's rose bushes. Caroline's black SUV pulled into the driveway, the same one from that first morning but cleaner now, without the dent from her crash into Miller's Creek. She stepped out carrying a manila folder and wearing the expression Jack had learned meant she had something important to discuss, eyebrows slightly raised, mouth set in a line that wasn't quite a frown. "The company wants to buy more properties in town," she said, settling beside him on the porch steps that no longer creaked under weight. "Turn them into affordable housing with the same rent-to-own program we started here." Jack nodded, watching Emma disappear around the corner toward Elm Street. It made sense. The program worked. Families stayed instead of moving away when factory jobs disappeared. Kids finished school in the same district. Communities survived. "They want you to manage the whole project," Caroline continued, opening the folder to reveal architectural drawings and budget spreadsheets. "Full salary, benefits, your own office in the new community development center. You'd be helping dozens of families instead of just fixing their appliances." The offer was everything Jack had never dared to dream about 18 months ago, when he was sleeping on couches and afraid to check the mailbox. Steady income that meant Emma could take piano lessons if she wanted. Respect from people who used to look through him at the grocery store. The chance to make a real difference in his community instead of just surviving in it. "There's one catch," Caroline said, smiling in a way that meant she was about to enjoy his reaction. "You'd have to work directly with me. Think you can handle having me as your boss?" Jack looked down the street where Emma had reappeared, pedaling steadily now, determination written in every push of the pedals. He thought about the man he'd been 18 months ago sleeping on the couch, afraid to check the mail, pushing away help because he thought accepting it made him weak. That man would have been terrified of owing someone so much, of being responsible for other people's futures. This man, the one who'd learned that strength sometimes meant letting people stand with you instead of always standing alone, felt ready. "I think I can manage," he said, "as long as you promise to stay out of my kitchen on Sunday mornings." Caroline laughed, the sound carrying across the quiet street. "Deal. But I'm keeping the flannel shirt." Emma rode past them, steady and confident now, calling over her shoulder without slowing down. "Dad, Caroline, watch me go around the whole block without stopping." They watched her disappear around the corner again. This brave girl, who'd learned that sometimes the best things in life came from people who chose to care, who showed up when it mattered, who proved that kindness could change everything if you let it. "She's going to be something special," Caroline said, watching the spot where Emma had vanished. Jack smiled, thinking about eviction notices and $5,000 checks, about pride and desperation, and the choice to trust someone who'd earned it through daily proof instead of grand gestures. "She already is," he said. "We all are." The sun set behind the little house on Maple Street, painting everything golden, the fresh paint, the flower bed, the Miller and Associates sign, the faces of 2 people who'd learned that sometimes the most important bridges are built one small act of kindness at a time. Inside, the refrigerator hummed quietly, no past due notices in sight. On the kitchen table, Emma's homework waited beside a vase of flowers from their garden, and tomorrow's possibilities stretched out like a road they'd built together, solid and sure and leading somewhere good. If this story moved you, If you believe that ordinary people can still change each other's lives through simple human decency, subscribe now. Because in a world that often feels broken, sometimes we all need reminding that kindness is the tool that fixes everything else.